Back in 2012, when he appeared and he was doing a tour of the European Union countries, and he was in the British Parliament, and he was saying what he was pushing for was that the Europe and the big chiefs surrounding Europe, party leaders, NGOs, businesses, had to make it their responsibility to, as policy, break up and dismantle the ethnic homogeneity of Europe. And so it was for the first time, because at the time there was this meme going around of this white genocide thing, and it had first kind of kicked off the Bob Whittaker white genocide thing. And just as that was gaining some traction, Peter Sutherland came out and actually just came flat out and said it. It's not very often that you get somebody where you can just pin down and say, well, okay, he's the enemy. Here it is. Because to a lot of people, it's a bit vague, and it's a bit kind of, what is it we're fighting? It's like fighting against mist. But in Sutherland's case, here he ticks all of the boxes. He's laying out the game plan. He's telling how he's going to do it. He's saying what he wants to do, and he's literally sitting there at conferences with the Bilderberger Group and the Trilateral Commission, putting this into policy, despite the fact he knows we don't want it. And he's dead. He's dead. And, there's a lot of European people dead because of him. Because it's all very well and good when you're going to be on these swanky dinners in Frankfurt and Brussels, and you're going to kind of ruminate over a sherry and a cigar about how fantastic and all of this. But what it really means is that women in Rotterdam and Burnley are being gang raped at the back of chip shops. But he doesn't see that, and he didn't give a shit. He didn't give a shit. Peter Sutherland can hide in plain sight because the morality of Europe as it is allows him to. He's not a villain. It's only far right extremists, and I saw it on Twitter today. I had a good go at it on Twitter today because I wanted to draw people's attention to who he was and what he represented, because it's one of those rare chances you get. He exposed himself. He came out and said it. He actually came out and said, we're going to have to break up the homogeneity of European countries. And the moral consensus in Europe supports that view. So he says this stuff, which actually it's genocidal, but he gets the green card. It's okay. Because he's got all of the media, he's got obviously, I mean, let's just look at his Wikipedia page, what I was talking about before. He's got everybody backing him up. He's a good guy. And then, like I said, on Twitter when you saw it, it was Irish, because I should take a step back here, because his ethnic background is suspect, but, everybody's going to be thinking, well, is he? And it looks like he is, but we don't have an actual concrete proof, so we'll just leave that for now. But these Irish media and the Irish Premier, all Jose Manuel Barroso and all Juncker and the European Union, they were all coming out and, we're so sad to see this. It's so sad. It's a tragedy. He was such a humanitarian, such a good guy. But from our perspective, he's genocidal. And as I say, they sit around in Brussels and in these big posh hotels, and they have these little meetings, and they talk about it in all such utopian tones. But it ends up, where it's a woman as a European woman gets gang raped in a bus shelter, and we've got diversity bollards up, and we've got snipers on rooftops. That's the reality of it. And these people really do deserve to be detested. But they're not, and this is where you've got the problem. And as I have to keep saying, Peter Sutherland was one of the rare times that one of them popped their heads up above the parapet and said, "This is the program. This is what we're going to do." and it's, you can have a glimpse into why as well. And again, you see he ticks all of the boxes because he was in high finance, and in the end, that's the ultimate enemy. There's the high finance, the central banks, the money power. And he was involved with Goldman Sachs, of course. And so what is it they're doing? Why are they doing it? Besides, the millenarian ambitions of a certain ethnic group, what are they doing and why? Well, and people will say, "Oh, it's a social justice warriors." Peter Sutherland was just a glorified social justice warrior. Well, no, he wasn't. What Peter Sutherland represents, he is the social justice warriors are their creation. These people created the social justice warriors. They're the killer attack drones. So we have to look again. Why? What is it? Well, it's this neoliberal capitalism. It's breaking down all borders to have trade and goods. And it's rending European people down into economic units. And because of the morality of the time, there's no reason whatsoever to say, well, why not just import more units of production and consumption? And that's what he says. That's literally what he says on his Wikipedia page. To them, we aren't people bounded to the land with kinship and ancient times or anything like that. We're just units. Consumption units, production units, and if one particular group of units is defective, then why not just bring in more? Why not just bring in more? Why not just replace them entirely? And another thing it does is when you've splintered and shattered the group identity like that, it's very difficult for them to kind of come together as a block and throw them out. These kind of parasites, this internationalist group of bastards who do this. If you're divided amongst yourself and you've got no group anymore, then it's much more difficult. Because that's what he's saying. If you're not a homogeneous group, then how are you actually going to club together and say, well, we don't want this anymore? Because, as Mark Collett calls them, the internationalists. We've got to be careful because this is going on YouTube and they own that and they censor it as well. I mean, they in the past, what happened for the internationalists was that the general population would become red-pilled. And then the ruling elite were in a problem because they were faced with, do we side with the native population or do we side with the internationalists? And it usually turned out to be a bit of a bloody affair. But more often than not, they eventually chose the side of the general public because the general public would lynch them. And the internationalists, in quotes, were booted out. But when you've got a multicultural population, that becomes much more difficult because then, well, how do you get together? How do you sort that out? Everybody's splintered, everybody's atomized, everybody's just a unit of production and consumption. So you're enslaved, you're fucked. And that's actually the game plan. And what's really interesting about Peter Sutherland, I think, is that you saw it all come together in one man. Like somebody said on a YouTube video, he's the cathedral incarnate. The idea that you've got this system of not just of finance or politics, but the morals as well, and it all comes together. And it all came together in Peter Sutherland, in one man, and you don't get that very often. Especially given that we're you know, the jury's out on his ethnic background. Not much, but you know. But they do die. They do die. And you can look at them like they're vampires and demons, and you can say, how the hell can we ever win this? How can we get on top of it? I don't know how we can ever win. But they do die. They are mortal. They're just human. Just human. And they die, and the system can die as well. We can beat them. And it's good to see that one of them has died, and that he is just flesh and blood. And I'm happy about it. It sounds horrible. I'm happy. I mean, he was an old man anyway. He was 71, but I'm happy that we can see they are just human, and they do just die. And I think that's pretty much all I've got to say on Peter Sutherland, to be honest.